How do we give ourselves free therapy without just reading books?
We tend to overcomplicate things. We tend to overcomplicate things because we think to ourselves, it cannot be that simple.
I am a firm believer in goal setting, visualizations, manifestations, and vision boards.
And what I realize is that when you're healthy, you are going to have lots of hopes, dreams, and goals. But when you are sick, you have only one.
When clients come to see me, their number one thing is I want more energy.
It's our physical, it's our mental, it's our emotional, it's our spiritual energy. The longest journey we as humans make are the inches from our heads to our hearts.
They want to lose weight because they want to feel better.
Yeah.
And I always remind them they're not correlated at all.
How much longer will you avoid what you are capable of doing in order to continue with what you are comfortable doing?
Welcome to the Dietitian Bites podcast with me, your host, Reshma Patel. I'm a registered dietitian and personal performance coach. I am also the founder of The Dietitian, a private clinic in Harrods providing nutrition and coaching services worldwide. I'm passionate about optimizing health and mindset for success. Each episode is packed with practical tips, expert insights, and a healthy dose of fun. Join me on this journey towards a healthier, happier life. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a very special guest, Simon Alexander Ong. Simon is a highly sought-after business coach, speaker, and best-selling author who has helped countless individuals and organizations achieve their goals and unlock their full potential. With his unique cultural blend and his philosophy, Simon has developed a reputation for his practical, insightful, and transformative approach to personal and professional development. I'm thrilled to have Simon join me today and share his wisdom and insights on how to achieve success in all areas of life, including health and wellness. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the one and only Simon Alexander Ong. I welcome you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. So Simon, before we even go into this beautiful book that you have written, I am going to give our audience a bit of a backstory of how I actually ended up meeting you. I am a firm believer in goal setting, visualizations, manifestations, and vision boards. I have been doing this from a very young age. I now encourage my children to do it. I don't just do it January. Most people will sit there and it's like, oh, new year, let's get all our goals out. I do it at numerous points in my life, but two significant points are January, obviously, and I do it actually in May. So when we record this, as we're recording our podcast, I am sitting there rewriting everything. When I read your book, which was last year, I read it and I was blown by it. And I'm not usually blown by many books. And I think you need to read a book and it needs to speak to you. So the way I felt with this, I don't think if I gave it to a family member, they'd feel the same. I guess, with me, I was sitting there, I was writing out what I wanted for this year. And your book, just the first chapter alone blew me away. It's almost as if I was writing it. I was like, oh my God, this is my stuff in here. It was mind-blowing. I then looked you up and I thought, I would love to meet this person because they've inspired me, but they align with everything I do with my clients. So like a crazy person on the 1st of January, I think I went onto LinkedIn and I thought, I'm just going to message him and see what happens. And sent you a message, something very brief of, I liked your book and you're actually on my vision board and I'd like to meet you. And I was blown when you messaged back and said, let's make it happen. I was like, what? What do you mean? Why do you want to meet me? And I told a dear friend, I was like, can you believe this happened to me? And she's like, it's just an automated message, Reshma. I don't think he really wants to meet you. And I was like, really? I was like, I don't think it's automated. I went back and I'm like, no, it definitely looks like he's typed it out. And from there, we ended up having a meeting. And not only have I just read this, I've now really highlighted it, made notes in it. I then quote it back to some of my clients. I ask them to read it. And it has become a part of my own coaching. So,
well, thank you so much for the kind words. And I just want to emphasize something you just shared there, is that very often we don't take that first step. You just reaching out, we just have to ask. If we don't ask, the answer is always no. And it's just about putting ourselves out there, planting seeds. You have no idea what's going to happen in the moment. And it's just putting out your requests into the universe.
Yeah.
If they come back, amazing. If they don't, hey, you try again. And it's just taking that first step.
So that's something that your book has actually taught me, or you have taught me, is actually put it out there and see how many times you can fail.
Yeah.
And that's such a scary approach to life. It's like, actually go out and try and fail, because at some point you're not going to. And what I've realized is every time I'm scared of doing something, and my biggest fear was I wanted to do this podcast. I then had to invite people onto the podcast. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And I stopped and I'm like, no, do that now, like right now. Draft the email and send it out. And I found 11 people that I wanted to speak to initially. And I think 9 or 10 out of the 11 people said yes within 48 hours of getting the email. And I'm like, oh, this is scary when people are saying yes. I'm like, I think I'm more comfortable with the rejection than I am with the acceptance, because you don't really know what to do once somebody says yes. Like, oh, now what? I haven't thought about it. Is that because I have set myself up to fail, or am I mentally set up to thinking that people are going to say no?
I think it's also part of any evolution in a journey that we're on. You know, when we try something for the first time, our brain automatically thinks about the negative. What if they don't reply? What if they say no? What if they don't like me approaching them? What if this doesn't work out? And so what happens is that if we don't take that first step, we've already lost. In fact, what I've realized, you know, I've not always got yeses, I've got nos as well. But what I've realized is that most human beings are nice and generous people. They just don't know how to help us until we tell them how they can help us or where we need help in. So once we put it out there, then now people understand how they can help us. Doesn't mean they're going to help us. They may not reply. They may just simply be busy. But if they see it and they do reply, guess what? You've got something you never imagined that you could have experienced. I mean, in the same way that Simon Sinek and Marie Forleo and these incredible thinkers have endorsed and supported my work, I would never have imagined that they would reply and say, Simon, I would love to be involved in the launch of your book. I would love to endorse it, and I would love to help where I can. I mean, that just blew my mind as well when I got those replies in my email.
I mean, it's a great feeling. It's a really good feeling. It almost puts that imposter syndrome away a little bit of, oh, people actually do want to help and they do want to support you if they can. But like you said, most people don't know how and where they fit in. And that's where we get better at asking the question of, this is actually what I need. Are you able to help me here? Which I hadn't quite thought about what I wanted when I first met you, even though it was very brief. I actually just wanted to meet you to say, this book is amazing and I use it every single day in my coaching. And you've inspired me to just continue doing what I do.
Yeah, and you know what? That is the basis, from my experience, of some of the best relationships. Because when you build your network, if you're always going in with, I want to get this from this person, and they want to get this from me, that's not really building relationships. That's transactional. It's very superficial. But if you go in and say, I like this person's energy, I like what they're about, I just want to connect. I don't care what happens, but I just want to connect and see where it goes. I mean, for me, that's where the best opportunities have opened up. It's just building relationships with diverse people doing amazing work. And at some point, things will happen. You don't know how and when, but just the fact that there's an energy connection is the beginning of every successful relationship.
Do we build relationships like that? Is that a new concept? Because it feels very new in that, you know, it's always been kind of tit for tat, or, oh, actually we could work together because this is what I bring to you and this is what, you know, you can get. And I feel like there is a transactional exchange there, whereas you're trying to say there actually isn't so much. It's an energy exchange.
Yeah, for the most successful relationships I've had and where opportunities have opened, it has always been about an energy exchange. I mean, I'll give an example, and it leads to the Marie Forleo endorsement. So I went to Marie Forleo's private book launch.
Yes.
It was a busy event, and as you can imagine, lots of people wanted her to sign a copy of their book. And there was no chance I was going to meet her at that time because there was a long queue for people to see Marie and get their book signed by her. But I saw this guy at the front. He was very animated. He had wild hair. He had very loud clothes. And he was very supportive of Marie. So I walk up to him And I introduced myself, and he introduces himself as Greg. He's an American guy, and I said to him, you must be a massive supporter of Marie because you've been cheering her on. I've been seeing you at the front, sort of giving her all the claps and giving her all the applause.
Yeah.
Do you follow her everywhere where she is? And she said, yeah, wherever Marie is, I am. And I said, you
Wow.
must be a big fan. And he then said to me, well, somebody has got to do her hair, right? And it was at that point I realized that he was Marie's hairstylist.
Yeah.
So we just connected, and I said, oh, you've got to check out these restaurants and bars in London while you're here.
Yeah.
And we stayed in touch for years, again, with no obvious way of doing any business together.
Yeah.
Just because we connected and there was a lovely exchange of energy.
Yeah.
And then when it came to putting the endorsements together, 2 days before the deadline, I reached out to him and I said, okay if it's a no, but I thought I'd ask anyway. When you
Yeah.
next catch up with Marie, it would be awesome if you could check in to see if she would be open to providing an endorsement for the book. And within a few days, he got back and said, Marie will email your publisher.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know that at the time that we first met.
Yeah.
At the time I first met him, I didn't have a book deal. There was no obvious way of doing business together.
Yeah.
It was simply connecting because there was a nice energy exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I loved his energy. He
Yep.
loved what I was about. We kept in touch. And over the years, we built a close relationship on social media.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a great example of just building relationships where people share your values
Yeah.
and they're ambitious in their own industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I feel like sometimes a connection happens even after where you build the business connection, maybe later of,
Yeah.
oh, I actually need this, or you could help me with something like this. At that point, Simon, I thought you were going to say you called him and asked him to do your hair. When I was like, what part of your hair?
I would be his easiest client. Zero all around. I'm done.
That's such a lovely way to connect with people. And you talk a lot about having connections that aren't necessarily, straightforward or,
Yeah.
they're your tribe, but you wouldn't expect those people to be standing in the room. And now I felt in my career, I've got a very strong relationship with dietitians in
Yeah.
particular and psychologists because we work together. And our connection actually comes with helping somebody. We both know that we will make a difference to that client's life. Whereas we're not friends, we don't really share anything else, but we come together to support clients. I then have the friends who have nothing to do with my business, nothing to do with my actual day-to-day, but they're there in the background cheering me on and supporting me. And I've never enjoyed social media. I'm not someone that particularly wants to be on it. However, I think in this day and age, you do have to. And it's only when you put a particular post up and your friends message you and say, I needed that today, and that really made a difference, I find the purpose of doing it because I couldn't find my why. Why am I doing it? My clients aren't on it. I don't generate any money from it. I don't get any new clients that way. It's a real, why? I ask myself, why am I doing it? And then I think, oh, actually, my tribe is watching me or following, and they're getting inspired and I'm making a difference to somebody's life. So there's the reason to why I am doing it. When I initially sent the request out for all the podcasts, everyone's like, oh, so why are you doing it? What's the purpose? And I'm like, oh God, am I that person that does things with no purpose? Like, I don't have a why. Do we need to have a why to why we do things in life? Like, say a podcast, if you were going to set a podcast, would you have a clear, this is exactly why I'm doing it?
Not always when you first start something, but deep down, there is something you're connected to. There must be a reason why when you sat down, the idea came to your head of, I want to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Now, either it could be part of your why or your vision is to impact more people at scale. So I'm just throwing an example out there. But
That's a good one.
Let's say that is one thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is that's what we call a vision and a why, because it's very broad, it's very macro, it's at a very high level, there's no specifics. So that's what makes a vision or why different to a goal. A goal is very specific, you can measure it, it's time-bound.
Yeah.
But with a vision and a why, it's much more emotional driven. It's I want to have impact on people's lives at scale. Now, what then happens is you sit with that. So that will start to ruminate in your mind. And as you expose yourself to conversations, influences, and other media, what happens is that starts to feed your ideas in terms of, well, what can I do to make that a reality? Yeah. And lots of ideas start propping up. I mean, it's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Lots of ideas
Yes.
start coming up in our head. And so it could be a podcast, it could be a book, it could be video content, it could be articles, it could be blogs. And at certain points, something will resonate with you in that moment that says, maybe we should run with this
Yep.
and see where it goes. And that's the beauty of experimentation. We never know how things are going to work out. In the same way that when I made that leap from the corporate world
Yes.
into the world of entrepreneurship, it was full of unknowns.
Yep.
I had no idea I would end up doing what I'm doing today. In fact, when I left, I said to myself, if I could build a successful one-to-one coaching practice, I would be happy. I would have the lifestyle I want, and I could be impacting people's lives.
Yep.
But what I began to see is that once you start on the path that is connected to your vision, lots of things begin opening up.
Yeah.
You know, the speaking started, and then I started doing brand partnerships, collaborations, writing a book, doing things more internationally.
Yeah.
None of those were planned. I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to do this. This is the purpose
Yes.
for doing it.
Yeah.
But as we evolve, and you do evolve, when you do something new you've never done before, you evolve as a person. You learn new skills, you have new relationships, you learn more about what is possible. That then opens up many more paths that were not visible before. And for me, that's part of the purpose. It's to understand what else you can do, what else is possible when you begin on a path that you've never done.
Yeah. This was definitely way out of my comfort zone. You know, to do a recorded podcast rather than just stand behind a screen and have my voice. I'm very good at that. And I think I can shy away from the camera quite easily. But one of the biggest things on my vision board was to step outside of my comfort zone. So when I know I can do something, I try to not do that. It's like, oh, you already know you can do that. You can talk to a microphone, but can you talk to an actual camera? And can you then have a conversation with somebody else? So I took that outside of my comfort zone. I still didn't know why I was doing it. I did a massive activity of branding, and it was phenomenal with Artie Palmer, and she got the best out of me. And I felt like at instances she was taking me to breaking point when she was asking me the why. And I thought when I started this podcast, I'm like, I bet I should just get Artie here to ask me the right questions, and then I can tell people why I'm doing it. After recording the first episode, I remember walking out of here feeling an all-time high adrenaline rush, and like I had the best experience of my life. I was like, that felt amazing. And that's when I realized my why is that feeling that I want to get. And I'm doing this actually for me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I'm talking about topics that I'm really passionate about and things that make a difference to my life. So why not?
And that feeling is incredible.
It really is.
And I think many of us at a very deep level, we crave that feeling. The reason we're exhausted, or the reason why society is caught in a trap of busyness, i.e. they're busy but not going anywhere, they're going in circles,
Yep.
is because we can already predict the feeling of our day before
Yeah.
we started it. So you wake up on a Monday morning, you can already predict that the meeting you have that morning is going to be boring,
Yes.
or you already know how the day is going to unfold, and it's the same Monday you've had week in and week out. But when you start to introduce novelty into your days, your weeks, your months, what happens is now your body and your mind cannot predict
Yep.
what that feeling will be. And so it gets excited. Yes, there will be nerves, but there's also excitement. And when you do accomplish that, even if it's the first small step, you're thinking, wow, that wasn't so bad on the one side.
Yeah.
On the other side, that was incredible. There's this adrenaline and energy coursing through your body.
Yeah.
In the same way it was for me when I first stepped onto a stage.
Yes.
And I had no idea how it was going to turn out, what the feedback would be like. But when I got off that stage, I was like, can I do more?
Yeah. That it's a phenomenal feeling. And also when you get a crowd energized and you get them talking and opening up and feeling things they haven't felt, I find that mind-blowing for me. So I don't do a lot of big audience things. I must have about 20 engagements in the year where I'm on a stage or I'm talking. A lot of my coaching will always be one-to-one.
Yeah.
It's quite private, it's quite intimate. But even then, when my clients leave with that feeling of, I feel great, or they message you, an hour or two after they've taken it all in, they've reflected a little bit, you know you're doing the right thing because you're passing on the feeling that you sit with most of the time, that excitement, that joy, that what can you do next, onto somebody else and giving them that.
Yeah, and I think we should never underestimate that impact. You know, if we just influence somebody's life, one person's, in a positive way,
Yeah.
just for a moment, imagine the consequences of that. They then go and speak to their friends and family
Yeah.
about that experience. They then experience how changed that person is.
Yeah.
And that network then shares with their network, with their network, and their network. So it's almost like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
You change one person's life, you create the ripple effect of everyone else that comes into contact with them.
Yeah. I left the NHS, having been a traditional NHS dietitian for many years, because I felt so unfulfilled. And I used to get really lovely comments from clients. Oh, she's such a lovely girl. We met a really nice dietitian. She helped. But they saw me for 5-10 minutes. And what they actually saw was the lovely dietitian. It was me with a good bedside manner, making sure they felt okay. I almost felt like I was in line with maybe the nursing staff looking after them. What I did for them was actually pen and paper activity. They never saw it.
Yeah.
They probably didn't even know the impact of me changing their supplements or anything like that. And it didn't feel fulfilling. Although surface level, yes, it did. I used to get a thank you, and, families were so supportive and kind. And I left that because I was like, I can't spend 5 minutes or 8 minutes or, 15 if it's a clinic, outpatient appointment. I want to spend an hour talking to somebody to really get to know them and then make give them the changes they need and be impactful in a different way. Private practice, the one thing it allows you is the freedom of time, which is what the NHS doesn't give you. It doesn't give you the time. It's, here's your 8 minutes, get it done. So you don't get to ask someone how they really are or how they're feeling. You go straight to the point of, do you like the taste of that supplement? Yes or no? Because then I'll give you another one if you don't like it. Are you going to take it? Yes or no? And now I feel like that fulfillment and purpose came. It's exactly the same job, but I changed the other parameters. I gave myself the time, also the opportunity to work with the people I want to work with. And I've realized in life, I think I've said more no's than yeses to clients working with me. Some of them simply because I don't feel they need a dietitian at that point, or they don't need me in particular, and what I can bring to the table isn't for them. And some of them, if you're really one of those personalities that I don't think I can work with, I wouldn't be the right person. It's not going to be the most pleasant experience with us working together. Have you ever said no to clients with coaching?
Many times, actually. Many times. Not at the beginning. At the beginning of my journey, I was very much yes to every opportunity because I was keen on building my experience. I was keen on exposing my coaching to people with very different backgrounds, different problems, different challenges. But as I developed my business, I got into the position where I could start saying no to people. And that was a powerful moment because now I could choose, in the same way you just shared, I could choose who I wanted to work with and who I didn't feel there would be a good partnership together and where there wouldn't be a clear benefit. And when people think about, well, isn't coaching great for everyone? Yes, on the one hand, but on the other hand, you've got to want it. It's one thing seeing coaching as something you need, it's another seeing coaching as something you want. Because the way you show up will be very different. It's not just a exchange of money in terms of buying into coaching. It's also an investment in terms of your energy, your time, and all of what is required when you show up in the moment. If you only turn up 50% of who you are and share 50% of what is in your mind, then whoever coaches you, you can only help them on that 50%. And so there has to be an element of trust and connection built. So you create the space for that transformation to occur.
It's I find coaching to be absolutely wild because of the questions that you ask and then the answers that you get, the thought-provoking nature of it. It really does blow me a lot. When I'm sitting in the room, I'm like, oh God, did I just ask that to the client? And I can see their face going, I've never thought about it that way, or I don't have the answer for that. And I'm like, just sit with the thought for a little while. The answers will come up. What made you go into coaching, and why did you get qualified in it? So you did a 2-year qualification.
Yeah, so I I graduated from university in the middle of 2007. I fell into the banking industry.
Oh, we know you're Lehman Brothers.
Indeed, I fell
Definitely has your name on it.
I fell into the banking industry because I felt that would be my version of success.
Yes.
The financial crisis of 2008 was the catalyst for me starting to think differently.
Yeah.
And how coaching was born was because when I was at university, in my penultimate year, while everybody was doing the odd jobs in retail stores or cafes or supermarkets, I actually did coaching on the side. So there was a company operating in London at the time that was helping students at some of the big universities get jobs in the city. I.e., they were helping them to present to a panel.
Yep.
They were helping them to interview better and to write a stronger CV. Now, I didn't focus on the CV part, but where I was employed from time to time was to help people communicate better and to interview better. Because I had a mutual friend that said, you should chat to Simon. He's good at speaking. He's good at communicating. And I said, great, I'm looking for some pocket money. Why not? So that's where it really started. And I continued that into my full-time career after graduation. And the reason I did wasn't because I needed the money, because once I was in full-time work, I was earning a fairly decent salary. I started it for the money when I was at university, but very quickly I kept going with it because I enjoyed seeing the transformation people were having. Getting that text message when someone said to me, Simon, I just landed 3 job offers. It's an amazing feeling. I can now choose which company I want to work for. And so when I was stepping back from work to decide what did I want to pursue, coaching was an obvious path. But I didn't know how to monetize it or how to turn that into a career. And that's why I sought a place to get a qualification in. How could I learn the skill of coaching, not as a side job, but as something that I could turn into a business? And that's really where the journey started.
And do you think it's important, I would say, to have the qualification behind you?
It's interesting. That's a big question because I think there's a yes and no to that question. For me, it's a yes because I would not have the background and the skills that allowed me to coach other people. At the same time, I know people who don't have qualifications but have that natural ability to ask great questions and get results. And so if you look at it from the customer point of view, you ask customers, what do you think about when you look for a coach to work with? Now, it's very rare for someone to reply where they got their qualifications from and what they scored in it. I mean, there's some industries where that's necessary, like if you're going into the medical field, that's absolutely necessary. But when it comes to coaching, especially in the way that I do coaching, people tend to focus more on the results. What have you achieved for these clients? What is your own track record? How have you grown? How have you been successful in coaching yourself? So people tend to look at the public information, i.e. the results, your progress, and how successful you are. The analogy I give people is that let's say you're looking for a coach. The first coach has some incredible qualifications, but you've never heard of them. The second coach has no qualifications, yet they've worked with some of the biggest sports stars, they've been featured in press, and they've been interviewed on national television. Who are you more inclined to want to work with? Now, whenever I put this question out there, straight away all hands go for the second. But yet you haven't considered qualifications yet. And so I think there is a yes or no answer to that. For me, it's a yes because without that experience, I don't think I will be where I am today because that was a pivotal moment for me to see, actually, this is fascinating, to be able to then apply these techniques and skills into the real world. So the realization of that gave me the confidence to go out and try this in public.
I have a big thing with qualifications, I think. I think it stems from my parents and culture and, you need to be qualified and you have to have a degree and you have to do it. So I cannot do something without the qualification. So I decided to get a coaching qualification exactly from where you have. And my reason for it was I spend an hour with a client and in that hour, a lot of things open up, especially business and, you know, their goals and personal development alongside the nutrition and the mental fitness and everything else. And I felt like there was a big crossover and I couldn't actually help people from a business perspective. I mean, I've got a rough idea what you should do, but I mean, what do I know about your multi-million-pound business? That's not That's not what I'm skilled in. But just to be able to have the conversation and to ask the right questions, I felt like I needed the qualification to, one, teach me to ask the right questions, but two, to feel confident in asking them. Because I have had the practice and the training, and, you know, I've done this number of hours with other people that are training or coach them. So for me, it was really important. And by no means did I think, oh, I'm going to start this, you know, coaching practice, or I'm going to become a coach. I just thought I'm going to become a really good dietitian.
I was exactly the same as you. I mean, I wanted that qualification because I felt it would give me the tools and the foundation.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to start a business or not from it. I was just curious to understand what was required.
Yeah.
You know, what would I have to know if I were to start a business some years down the line? But at the same time, you know, as I've grown myself, I've realized that sometimes that can be a barrier for people in the sense that until I have something, then I can do something.
Yeah.
When sometimes you can still get started. And there's a role for qualifications. There is also a role for experience. You know, just to throw another example into the conversation, Heston Blumenthal, one of the most highly regarded chefs in the world, didn't go through
culinary school,
a sort of culinary school traditional path. He self-taught.
Yes.
He experimented. And what happened is he was able to approach the world of cooking in such a unique way that he stood out more than his peers.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a role for both qualifications and experience.
Yeah.
And understanding just the balance between the two. Yes, depending on what your work is, you are going to need some qualifications to give you that grounding. On the other side, if you've got solid experience, nothing can really substitute for that, because that experience gives you confidence, insight, and knowledge that someone less experienced won't have.
Absolutely. Yes. I just feel like there's so many coaches out there. Everyone seems to have a wellness coach, well-being coach, performance coach. And I don't look at the title anymore because I'm like, well, I just need to see the result actually.
Yeah.
Who,
and I
who
think
are your
this
clients?
this is the world we're in at the moment, in that it has never been easier to start a business, whether it is in coaching or any other industry. Within 24 hours, you can have a website set up, you can have social media set up, you can have ads running. So people just looking at that surface may think, I should go work with you.
Yeah.
But you've only been in business for a day. And so it's so easy to get a business up and running.
Yeah.
The hard part, however, is standing out.
Yes.
Never been easier to start, never been harder to stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to talk a bit about this amazing book, only because it's changed not just my life, but I'm sure all my clients that read it do have something positive to say about it, which is great. Your first chapter alone is where I was just absolutely surprised, and I thought, how is someone with no nutrition qualification or not actually even a wellness qualification, whatever that could be, how are they talking about physical energy? Because for me, when clients come to see me, their number one thing is, I want more energy. And I'm like, that's such a difficult thing to work with, because I now have to figure out where you are using all this energy. And the foundations of my programs with my clients are, the first thing I look for is emotional well-being. So I don't look at their food. They think they're coming to talk to me about food. I'm like, that's the last thing we're going to talk about. The number one thing is emotional well-being. So I'm actually looking at your stress management techniques and your sleep, the time you spend outdoors, how many hours you're glued to your laptops, what your work requires you to do, how much travel, do you have children, what your support system looks like. And it's a very strange conversation to have, but that's the foundations for me on your energy. It's, if you're not sleeping, but you're eating great and you're working out every single day, it doesn't matter.
And that is exactly why I started the first chapter of the book around our health.
Yeah.
And in that first chapter, I talk about sleep, nutrition, and movement. As you said, I mean, you can have all the tips, the tricks, and the hacks to achieve your goals. But if you don't have sufficient sleep, you're never going to put them into action. You are never going to show up in the way that you want.
Yeah.
And that's why sleep is so important. And it's funny because when I wrote the book, I wrote it during the depths of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
I got the book deal in April 2020. I started writing a few weeks later.
Yeah.
And maybe if it was a different world, I would have started with a different focus in the first chapter. But the reason I started the first chapter around our physical energy is because during the COVID pandemic, I saw the impact of it.
Yeah.
Many people lost loved ones. Many people faced illnesses because of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that when you're healthy, you are going to have lots of hopes, dreams, and goals. But when you are sick, you have only one.
Yes.
And so it made me understand just how important it is to have good health. Health is the first wealth.
Yeah. And it was very strange coming out from the NHS setting where I was actually looking after clients that are really unwell, where they've lost their health and we're trying to get them back to baseline, to where I am now, where everyone is actually healthy. They're healthy, they've got time, they have the money, they can work out, they can eat really well. However, they're the most tired of all the population groups. And I think I'm really confused to what it is that you're doing, because how can you be so mentally drained? And a lot of people talk to me about, we don't have the time, which in my head translates to, this is not your priority.
Indeed. I think you couldn't have said it better. It's whenever we say we don't have time, what we're actually saying is, this is not a priority for me right now.
Yeah.
And when we talk about feeling drained, it's not necessarily one part of our life. It could be a factor of different things. So when I talk about energy, it's our physical, it's our mental, it's our emotional, it's our spiritual energy.
Yeah.
And so even if you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're moving your body, you could be low on energy because you're not doing the things that bring you joy. You could be doing work that is just boring, it's soul-sucking, and it's not what you were meant to do. And you're not able to express your gifts and talents. So when that's the case, you'll experience tension inside of you, frustration. That's the emotion you go through. But if you're doing something which brings you joy, that you're excited about, guess what? You're going to feel energized.
Yes.
And so we've got to look at these different areas. I think that when we think about someone's energy, we can default, many of us can default to just the physical side.
Yeah.
Are you eating right? Are you moving your body on a regular basis? Are you sleeping well?
Yeah.
And then we just go, great, if you're doing that, you should be energized. But that's only one part of it.
Absolutely.
And you've still got the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual things that are not as obvious because we can't see them on the outside, but they're all about the inner work. If we work on the inner part of ourselves, then what happens is we show up very differently.
Yeah. And I find that a lot with my clients, that they're coming to me for something a lot deeper than weight loss. They come through the door and I'm going to market this business as a weight loss business because it's the easiest way to talk to somebody. That's what they think they want. They want to lose weight because they want to feel better. And I always remind them, they're not correlated at all. It's just, that does not work. Nobody loses weight to feel better. If you are, I don't know, you have clinical conditions and you want to manage them better, you may well feel better because you feel in control of managing your conditions. But you can't tell me that a bit of weight loss is going to somehow bring happiness into your life. It certainly won't. And this is where my coaching comes in, of asking them what they really want and why they're really sat here. Because I'll give them the weight loss, but what happens if you're not happy after that? Did the program not work? Or did we simply, get two things completely incorrect, that weight loss won't give you the happiness?
And this is why I love this popular saying that goes, the longest journey we as humans make are the inches from our heads to our hearts. Never an easy journey, but the most important that we will ever make. Because when we're stuck in our heads, we're thinking this is what we want, we're thinking this is what we have to lose. But when we have the courage to make that journey towards our hearts, we understand who we really are and what we really want. And that unleashes one of the greatest sources of energy that there is.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. And I think all these sayings, they're there for a reason. We should really write them and then think about them in a bit more detail of what is that actually saying to me? I have recently started to offer a 30-minute call to my clients. Yes, it's a call. If you want to work with me, you get a feel of it. But more important to that, it's a call where if you can't work with me, get the best 30 minutes you can. I will get you on the right track and help you and give you top tips to get you started. And that alone, I guarantee, will make a difference to people's lives. If I can just tweak a few things and you start working on that and then build on it, it will make a difference. Your book comes up in my 30-minute conversation. And the reason I say that is at the back of this book, I did put down how can we give ourselves free therapy? It has to be free because people don't want to pay for it. A lot of people can't afford to pay for it. Even to look for a therapist alone is an expensive venture. I remember when I wanted therapy, I went through about 6 or 7 different therapists before I picked the actual person I wanted to work with. And my deciding factor were things like, oh, actually, you know, she really does need to be Indian, only because a lot of what I want to talk about is cultural.
Yeah.
And it's not just, you know, it's superficial things that everyone will, it's not a generic concept. It's real, deep-rooted culture that I would like to have a discussion about. So whilst they were wonderful, qualified, and really did help, they didn't understand what I was saying. And this is where the concept of that, how do we give ourselves free therapy without just reading books? So books is the easiest one because I think there's so many amazing, your book, there are lots of self-help books. Atomic Habits is a book that I have always told my clients to read. I'm like, you find it difficult to get processes and habit building? Read this book. It's a step-by-step guide on what you have to do. It literally tells you where to put your trainers down and only exercise for 2 minutes and then let go of it. How else can we give people free therapy?
3 things come to my mind. The first is writing.
Yeah.
Making the time to write. Anything in your head, put it down onto paper, whether that's planning, whether that's capturing of ideas, whether it's capturing your emotions, your thoughts, your challenges or things that you've been going through that are unexpected. Put them all down onto paper.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because if you don't put it onto paper, it can overwhelm you. So you get caught in your thinking.
Yes.
You end up thinking about your thinking, get so caught up in your head that either you take no action or it just simply drains you of energy. Yeah. But when you download that onto paper, what happens is that you start to get some clarity as to maybe what the next best step forward is, or perhaps something isn't as bad as you first thought.
Yeah.
And there's a quote I share in the book from a woman called Diana Chow, somebody I interviewed for the book, where she said that writing is humanity distilled into ink. And the reason she said that, which I think is a very powerful quote, is because if we want to get access to more wisdom, it begins with knowing ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the first one would be writing. Second is silence. You know, to make space for silence. Because what happens is that what we begin to understand, as I have, spending more time in silence through meditation and through meditative practices, is that silence is far from empty. It is always full of the answers, the wisdoms, and the insights that we seek.
Yeah.
And so when we come out of those periods of silence, it gives us the clarity we so often seek. And the last one is connection, which is tough because we're in a world now where connections have become weaker and weaker and weaker. So we're only connecting with people at a virtual level. We're asking superficial questions such as, how was your week? What are you doing for the weekend? Where are you going on holiday? But what I mean by connections is getting deep with close friends, getting deep with people you trust about what is really going on, your challenges, your hopes, your aspirations, your plans. Because when you can connect deep with somebody or even a group of people, what happens is you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel recognized. And that, I think, can be absolutely transformational.
How can people connect when they have one persona? So say all my friends know me as one person. They really don't know the work version of me at all because it's so separated to my professional life, my personal life are so different. So different that I laugh about it to the point where when you see me at work as a professional, you may not recognize me. And when you see me at home, I quite resemble like that homeless mum running around with her children, you know.
We all do.
It's so different. And I struggle with that myself of, am I in two identities sometimes? You know, I have the chilled trainer mum, but when I'm at work, I couldn't bear to be the trainer mum. I want to look a particular way because I'm in my element and I feel great when I'm there. I wouldn't feel so great if I was trying to get on a football pitch with my kids with stilettos on. So with connection, how do we remain authentic to that?
Sure. Well, I think there's 2 different things from what you're sharing. We're all going to look very different when we're at home to when we're at work. And that depends what sort of work you're doing. You know, often we have to go to work in a particular uniform, whatever industry you work in. And when you're at home, especially if you're a parent, you're going to look very different. You're not going to have the chance or the time to look the way you want. And so you just settle with, as long as my kids are happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's one part of it. The other part is more about how we communicate and what we communicate.
Yeah.
I think that it's actually about bringing the two together. You know, whether people meet me on a weekend or during the daytime or when I'm on holiday, they know what I do.
Yeah.
And so I brought the two together because I think that it's difficult to separate the two if we want to live authentically, because work is a part of your life. It's who you are. And often the process of getting to that point is about loving every aspect of yourself. Loving who you are when you're at work, loving who you are when you're at home.
Yeah.
And when we love every part of ourselves, even the dark side of ourselves, we all have dark sides, we all have sides we feel a bit ashamed about.
Yeah.
But when we just love every part of ourselves, then we can show up more authentically. People get what they see. They get what they see in the tin. And they get to understand who you are at a holistic level, rather than just one part of you. They only get to know one piece of the puzzle.
How do we let our friends not necessarily know that we have changed, or colleagues or people, because we do change and we do evolve, especially if you go through major life changes, death, divorce, you know, even change in environment. You move homes, you move locations. You get to almost shed one layer of your skin and, you know, rebuild yourself. Is it tough to then present as this new person? Because when people are speaking to you, they're speaking to the old version of you.
Absolutely.
And there's a huge disconnection.
It's tough. And it's just about understanding that when we evolve, because when you're focused on a journey of personal growth, of course you will evolve. When you evolve, not everybody will be ready to evolve at the same pace you are. There will be some people that will evolve with you and some people that will stay where they are. And this is part of the journey. You know, the friends that I spend time with at the beginning of my journey are probably very different to the people I now spend time with. And that's because what happens is that you connect with people at a different level.
Yep.
You know, I'm still friends with some of the people that I started my banking career with.
Yep.
But I'm not going to lie, it's a lot tougher to hold a conversation with them than it was back then.
Yeah.
Because when I ask them questions such as, how have things been going? Mostly, there's not much to share.
Yeah.
And then it becomes all focused on me. What am I doing? Oh, I've seen you do this. I've seen you travel here. I've seen you talk about your work here. And so I find myself doing all the talking.
Yeah.
And while that's great for the ego, it's not great for me in terms of development, because I want to be inspired by other people around the table.
Yes.
And so I think as part of that evolution, naturally, some people you're going to spend less time with and others you spend more time with. And I think that's just part of the journey.
I say that's part of growth, you know, and it's almost how I teach my children things, that people will come, they go, and there's no, you know, it's not that you're not friends anymore. It's just you do have different purpose, different values almost, but you do align somewhere. So you will meet them and you'll have that alignment. But usually, you know, we grow and we evolve. And I think that's something a lot of my clients also find difficult as they go through a massive transformation journey. They work with me for between about 14 weeks to a year. When someone's worked with someone for a year, you really, you know, you can transform them. Essentially. And they find it really difficult when it comes to working relationships. So when they're working with a business partner, for example, their values, what they want in the business is completely different, or how they have friendships, they change. And I get asked a lot, how do I now tell this person, how do I communicate to them that I'm not that person? And
well, often the funny thing is, and again, this is just from my own experience, often we don't need to communicate that. Because when you catch up with them, they notice. There's a different vibe about you. You know, it's like you deciding to go to the gym most days of the week. And in 5 years' time, if you haven't met your friend for 5 years and you meet up, guaranteed you will be a very different person. They will notice how different you are. You look different. You come across different. And your attitude is just so much more positive. So often we don't need to communicate it. Because when we embrace a different lifestyle, it shows.
You've talked a lot in your book about some of the challenges that you have faced, especially in transitioning of careers. And a big question that I'm always asked is, how can I do something different when I need to earn? you know, I need the money, so I can't just get up and leave this job. It pays for everything, and I've got dependents and bills, but I hate my job. I mean, I think most people must hear it at least at some point, or they must say it at some point.
I get asked that a lot as well.
And it's a struggle because I don't, you know, for me, I thought I left my job not because I wanted more money, it's because I wanted a purpose. I wanted to feel that deeper connection with clients. So it was my natural right. I'm not here. I'm going to go away and do it differently and do it for myself. And it's really difficult. Well, I struggle still to this day as a coach to give them advice on that one.
Well, first of all, I can empathize, and I would say to anybody thinking or asking that question, you are not alone. There are lots of people who think about this across the world. I was one of them. You know, I was working finance. Finance was very long hours, very draining in terms of what was required. And I had little time to actually make progress in what I wanted to do. But I would say the first step is to change your relationship with your current circumstance. Because as long as you see your current circumstance as soul-sucking, draining, and in a very negative frame, then what's going to happen is that before you even have time to focus on what you want to do, you're already exhausted. So what I would do first, and what I did, is I changed my relationship with my current circumstance, i.e., I became grateful for the fact that I had a job. I became grateful because I saw it as a source of income that would allow me to then explore what I really wanted to do. So I saw it as if I was starting a business. That was my capital. The income I got from my job was my capital. The question was, what am I going to do with that capital? I could either spend it on a nice holiday, I can spend it on designer clothes, or I can actually channel that capital into something productive that would allow me to move forward in what I want to do. So that's the first thing. First thing is to change the relationship you have with your current circumstance to something more positive. The next thing is to then focus on what is in your control, however small. Don't dwell on the things outside of your control. It will just slow you down. Focus on what is in your control. So if I go back to my journey, the first thing I did in terms of what was in my control is I quit that job, and I referenced this particular job in the first chapter. So I referenced that job in the first chapter. I quit that job, and I decided to go to something within finance that was a lot kinder in terms of the hours. So it was a 9-to-5 job. It was a research role. It wasn't very demanding, but I did it on purpose. I took a pay cut. But the extra time I had on the weekends and after work gave me the time I needed to go out and explore what else there could be for me. And that gave me the ideas of what could I do next? Who could I connect with? What strategies could I try? And that's focusing on what I could control. So I think starting with those 2 points would start to focus your attention on what you can influence rather than what you can't.
I love that. That's actually taken a step back. To do the reflection, almost like, you know, when you talk about slowing down and the silence to give your brain that time to think and pivot into a different way is really important. I think you're someone that really talks about work-life balance. Do we always need to have a work-life balance? I've been through a phase in my life where there was no work-life balance because I just had to do it. I had to work 15, 16 hours. I needed to have those hours under my belt. I needed the money. And without that, I could not have got a work-life balance. Is that okay at some point?
Well, first of all, I think having a work-life balance is a bit of a myth. It goes back to what I said earlier. Work is part of your life. It's part of who you are. You know, you can't see Richard Branson, for example, stopping anytime soon in terms of his entrepreneurial ventures because it is who he is. It's part of his DNA. And if he was to separate that from himself and say, okay, that's work, this is life, what happens is that he would have itchy feet to get back into doing his business-related activities. What I would focus on is less about work-life balance. As I said, work is part of life, but focus on balancing your energy. So what I mean by that is balancing your energy will be different for all of us. You know, this is why it's important to understand what does balancing your energy mean for you. Because for some of us, we might be better working in the morning. Some of us may be better working at night. So how do I balance that in a way that I can show up during the day? When I launched the book, I knew that for the 2 months before and the 2 months after, it was going to be solid in
Yep.
terms of requests, in terms of publicity work, in terms of me physically putting myself out there. So knowing that, I knew that in order to achieve some sort of balance in my energy so that I could maintain what I needed to have to show up in the way I wanted,
Yep.
I said no more clients during that time. So from January to July, I took on no new clients. And that was simply to give me the space
Yep.
and the energy to focus on what I knew was going to come to help promote the book. So really, I think work-life balance is a myth. Understand balance, what it means for you,
Yep.
and where you're going to need the energy, and plan ahead.
Absolutely. This page, Awaken, this is my favorite page. If you could get this onto a billboard everywhere, that's all the self-help people need. That's one page in your whole book that people can start making a difference with. And you start it with, stop treating your health as a side hustle. There is not a single client of mine that this will not resonate with.
Yeah.
They come to me after the businesses are established, the kids are older, they don't have to rely on them, they have a bit more time. And that means that their health has always been a side hustle.
Yeah.
And today they've come to me to actually prioritize it. And it's such a big thing. I mean, I don't even know at what age we should start telling people that this is not your side hustle.
Yeah, I think from as young as possible. A lot of people often come to me and they say, like, why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to do what I want to do and to get the things in place that will help me achieve it?
Yeah.
And what I say to them, actually, many of the things that you are after and the changes that you desire are simple.
Yeah.
We tend to overcomplicate things. We tend to overcomplicate things because we think to ourselves, it cannot be that simple. But if we look at, some of the most well-known proverbs that we all know and we've heard through our childhood, they're true. But how often do we follow them?
Yeah.
One that comes to mind, given the conversation we're having, is an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth in it, but how many of us actually eat the apple a day, or as it is pointing towards, eat fruit every day?
Yeah.
Such a simple thing to do, but yet many of us overlook it and try and overcomplicate it.
Yeah. You use bananas in your book, by the
Yeah.
way. I love that. I love that. Bananas in our profession are a no-no. Everyone thinks a banana is not good for you. And if you're going to put on weight, don't eat bananas. If you've got diabetes, don't eat bananas. And here you are telling everyone to eat a banana. I was like, I love it. I love it. It sits so comfortably with me. Simon, it has been absolutely amazing speaking to you. I always feel energized, and I know you hear this with everyone who speaks to you, they feel energized. But I do. I feel inspired. I feel energized. I feel very grateful to have the experience with you and to even read your book and share that wisdom with everyone else. And the way I sell it is, if you want to hear it for the second time in another way, read the book. It's because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's different people saying it, and for once it's not a health professional saying it, so it must be true. I feel like there's a lot of credit when it doesn't come from a health professional. It's like, look, these are the foundations. Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And if you want to be successful in any area of your life, these are the foundations you really need to lay down.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. And I think that for me, the hope is really, if at a minimum it raises questions and it gets people thinking once they've read the book, then I've done my job. Because it goes back to what we were saying earlier, Reshma, about questions being so powerful.
Yeah.
Many people seek answers, but I think the best answers begin with better questions.
Absolutely.
It's all about having that bias towards action. And if there's one powerful question to leave listeners and viewers with, is how much longer will you avoid what you are capable of doing in order to continue with what you are comfortable doing? And that is a great example of a powerful question in action.
Yeah. I spend my life doing the uncomfortable at the moment. I feel like at some point it needs to stop, but I'm always doing things that are uncomfortable to me. Even if they're very small things. I recorded a a podcast with a dog by my feet. I'm petrified of dogs, like petrified. I don't really enjoy it. I was sweating through the whole thing, but I kept telling myself, you need to do this. You need to stay outside of your comfort zone. And if that dog is scaring you, then that's exactly where you need to be. So Simon, before we finish, I give all my guests an opportunity to ask me any questions, or a question at least, so our viewers and listeners can get to know me a bit better.
Fantastic. Well, I think the question I would probably throw your way is, what one idea has transformed your life for the better?
The one idea I would say is going back to live outside of your comfort zone and to challenge all your social norms. I've grown up in an environment that has been led by culture. My parents had a particular viewpoint of me and what they wanted me to do. And, you know, a lot of people sometimes ask me, oh, why did you become a dietitian? And, you know, the answer is really simple for me. I just wasn't clever enough to be a doctor. And that was my choice. It was, oh, I'm not good at maths, so I'm going to do science. If I'm going to science, I should really be a doctor. Till the realization came that, oh, I don't have the grades for this, so I need to be another health professional, you know, speech and language, occupational therapist. So I now challenge that mindset in my head. I might not do it out loud, but everything that I have learned from a cultural perspective and my parents, I challenge it to ensure that I pretty much don't, you know, take that on, and my kids are not listening to that voice that I've been listening to for many years. But what's really transformed my life is staying outside of my comfort zone. Doing the difficult things has made my life a lot easier, and I don't take that lightly. It really has. I thought I had an easy road, and I had a really easy road for years. And life felt so difficult when I had that. I'm like, how can that even be? I've got everything and it feels so difficult. I now challenge myself every day, whether it be a big challenge or a small challenge, and I feel like I live the most easiest and most comfortable life I've ever led.
I love that. It reminds me of the quote, when you do what most won't, you will eventually be able to enjoy what most can't.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I might be there. So I encourage my clients, my listeners, my friends, do that. Do the one thing that scares you the most, and let's just see what happens. And there will be so many people supporting you and wanting you to win that failure almost won't be an option.
Indeed.
Simon, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Dietitian Bites podcast. I hope you found the information shared today valuable. To stay up to date with the latest episodes, please hit the subscribe or follow button so you never miss any episode. And if you have any comments or suggestions, I would love to hear from you. For more personalised guidance on your health and nutrition journey, don't hesitate to book in a 30-minute consultation with me through my website, thedietitian.com. And for daily inspiration and tips, you can follow me on social media at The Dietitian Global. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Dietitian Bites podcast.